Welcome to the Commercial Kitchen Chronicles, a podcast dedicated to the commercial food equipment repair industry. My name is Pat Finley. I'm a lead master certified technician at General Parts Group. My goal is to shine a light on what I believe to be one of the most interesting and rewarding industries a field service technician can work in. I love the work I do, and I'm glad you're here listening to this podcast. In this episode, Rich Ortega and I interview Jay Maiden with Kolpak RDI. What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Commercial Kitchen Chronicles. I'm joined by Rich Ortega tonight, and we have a very special guest, Jay Maiden from Kolpak. If you don't know Jay, you probably want to follow him because he shows the good, the bad, and the ugly of refrigeration, but he does it in a positive manner to try to improve everybody's job. So how are you guys doing tonight?
What's up, fellas?
Hey, doing good, man. How about you?
Good. Are you inside tonight so we don't want to hear the frogs and the motorcycle?
Yeah.
Anything else?
Yeah, it's getting dark too fast now, so I got to take the podcast inside, which means no cigars, but hey, whatever.
I was waiting for you.
Yeah.
I was waiting for him to tell ghost stories last week. He had a light. It was like light up his face. Like he was at a campfire getting ready to tell ghost stories. So
Yeah,
build you an office and you can smoke cigars like I do, man.
that's the plan at some point.
Get you a little. My buddy just bought a house and like he bought a big house, just him, his wife, and his dogs. I'm like, oh, where's your office? And it's like a little closet. This is gonna be his podcast studio, just because you don't have to worry about echoes and stuff. I'm like, man, I couldn't do it. So I wanted to have Jay on because Jay does a great job training for Kolpak, servicing, handling service providers, parts, and stuff like that. So if you guys don't know, Jay is the director of service for Kolpak / RDI. So what's going on, Jay?
I'm looking forward to this all night, waiting to get on. Say my piece.
Say your piece. Yeah, I'm sure you got a bunch to say. You're pretty opinionated. You like I said, showing the good, the bad, the ugly. I reached out to you today. I got an old box that the floor's given out underneath the door, going from the cooler to the freezer. Just years and years, people step in there, dragging the dolly across there, load the French fries, and everything else is kind of beat it up. So we get some metal and kind of beat it back over and put a new threshold on it and clean it all up, see if we can get a few more years out of it. I actually diamond plated that floor probably 7 years ago. They gouged out the seal in between it, got water down in there, and tore it all up. We actually dried it out, sealed, caulked everything to death, and diamond plated the floor. And it's lasted 7-8 years, but they're just
Floors and doors take the most abuse in a walk-in, and we've got options there. We can do a bolt-over door in anybody's walk-in. We can do a drop-in floor in anybody's walk-in as well, and it extends the life of a walk-in. I mean, we've got walk-ins out there that are 40 years old still kicking.
Yeah, I see some old ones out there, some schools and stuff.
Yeah, we do a good amount of what do we call them? Door caps. So basically a bolt-on door, because those doors are just falling apart and you don't have any data on it. So you just take a bunch of measurements, submit the form, and new door comes and goes on. And a lot of times, if the rest of the box is taken care of, that's really all you need to do.
That's right. Wall panels, ceiling panels, they last a real long time if they take care of it. But the doors are always the most abused, and of course the floors, if they roll a lot of cart traffic and kegs and stuff like that on our standard foot traffic floor, they don't last very long.
Yeah, no one's paying for that upgraded floor, are they? Very rarely.
Yeah.
So before we get too far into getting started, before I forget, I just want to throw out there to everybody, my first, I want to say, real interaction with Jay. He actually taught me something that I never knew. I had messaged him because we have a chain restaurant that has a horrible problem with moisture intrusion and whatnot in their walk-ins. And I had messaged him to find out if that, what's that air curtain thing called? What do you guys call that?
We've got an air shield that we can sell too. That can adapt to anybody's walk-in. It keeps hot air out and cold air in.
So I messaged him like, hey, do you think your air shield will solve this problem? So he's like, well, send me some pictures of it. And he's like, I mean, it might, but he starts breaking down, defrost cycles and then explaining to me how, which I never knew, too many defrost cycles will actually cause that to will cause moisture accumulation by the evaporator. And then that in a lot of situations, a walk-in freezer only needs 30 to 45 minute defrost, which that blew my mind. But I said, hey, you know what? I got nothing to lose, so let's try this out. And for the most part, it took care of the issue. I was like, wow. So that was my first interaction with Jay. So he's got a bunch of knowledge. He knows a lot of stuff that I don't even know, and I I know a good amount of stuff, and he's always willing to help people. So
We got Jeff Victory. He's over on LinkedIn. He says, I've done a fair amount of bolt-on doors in the past. Also, Jay, isn't it Ice Cream Thursday?
It was. I forgot to post it today, but yes, it was Ice Cream Thursday today.
Yeah, Jay's always posted his food, his ice cream. You never know he's going to whip up over there on the grill or something. So,
food, ice cream, or a rubber threshold.
That's right. I mean, that's crazy. I've never seen it before in my life.
Me neither.
if you don't follow Jay, like I said, he'll show the best of work and the worst of work, but he's never calling anybody out.
No.
He's using examples of learning experience. He's killing everybody with positiveness. So he's trying to make the world a better place. He's trying to make the walk-ins last longer, trying to improve the customer experience, technician experience, and his experience. So if you don't follow him, you're going to learn some stuff. I see some stuff that's pretty questionable, and I'm like, man, how's that get by? It's amazing what actually happens out there in the real world.
Yeah. And I see it every day. Me and my team. Got the greatest team on earth. I got to give them props. I got a service team, parts team, and warranty team. They're the best team on earth. They're what makes it work every day. Every day.
That's awesome. So RDI is just the refrigeration side of the walk-ins, correct?
So we've actually got 3 brands. We got Kolpak, which does walk-ins and refrigeration. We have Harford, which is a lesser brand, I guess, or a discount brand of walk-in only. And we have RDI, which is refrigeration only. RDI is for our distribution channels. Bakers and places like that will stock condensing units and evaporators. So if somebody needs a last-minute condensing unit or an evaporator, they can go to Baker and just pull an RDI evaporator or condensing unit or both and put it in anybody's walk-in.
Yeah, I want to say I used to install, I'm pretty sure it was RDI, because at least when I was in Orlando still, that was the only brand of pre-assembled and pre-charged systems that was in the whole area, and Baker used to carry those, and I loved installing it. I went to do a quote for a customer, and they're like, well, do you want to the Baker was like, do you want a pre-assembled evap and a pre-charged condensing unit? I'm like, you mean you want to like eliminate 30% of my work? Hell yes, that's what I want.
I don't know how many other companies are doing that, but yeah, our condensing units are pre-charged with the right amount of refrigerant for up to a 50-foot line run, and evaporators come with a TXV solenoid and temp control pre-installed, so it does make it a whole lot easier.
Yeah,
cheaper.
I know there's several pre-assembled evaps. I'm still not sure of anybody else pre-charging the condensing units. Not that I've seen.
No, that's the only one. And that brings up a great point. It's pre-charged for that unit. So if that unit comes in the north, and this has been a controversial topic, and Richard going. So that unit goes into the north. What would you rather see, a headmaster or a fan cycle control?
Headmaster.
And so that unit's already pre-charged for that headmaster in mind, then, right?
With a 50-foot line run, correct.
That's all I need to know.
Yep. Fan cycles in the south, headmasters in the north.
That's what I'm saying. So that makes sense to me.
I'm a fan of fan cycles all day.
Yeah. Fan cycles, I mean, I've dealt with both. When I first started, I'll be the guy that didn't understand headmasters, and I cut them out, put fan cycle controls in, and did that. And then after learning more, I realized I really did my customer a disservice by doing that. So, I mean, it is.
In Europe and Indy.
Yeah, you're from the south.
I'm in South Carolina. I mean,
it gets cold there, but it's not like Indiana.
Not like that though.
We get below zero. I mean, it happens here. So once I finally understood what the headmaster does, I was able to figure out so many more things. It's just crazy.
There's still limitations though. When we get places in Minnesota, they get like minus 30, and they call and say our system's not running. I can't fix that. I can't overcome minus 30 degrees. I can't.
Yeah, that's when you start getting air shutters to try to shut the air off. You shut the fans off and hope for the best, and it still doesn't.
Well, just like in the north, if it gets that cold, put the condensing unit inside the building somewhere. Same thing out in Vegas or Arizona. I mean, don't put it on a rooftop that's going to get 130 degrees. I mean, it's hard to overcome stuff like that. You need to put it inside the building. A little thought ahead of time goes a long way. Yeah,
and we can talk about that a little bit later. The headmaster does a great job. And the thing I get is people don't understand how they work. And once you understand how they work, it's a lot better, to deal with, especially in the north. Like in the south, you can get away with fan cycle controls. You just can't do it up here. So it's good to know. I mean, that's a whole nother topic. We can spend a whole day on headmaster. and still
I
have
was just
people.
gonna say before we run down that rabbit hole, because that's got potential to turn into
No,
something big.
we're not going to do that. We'll do that for another time. But I wanted to get Jay on and talk about everything Kolpak has to offer and RDI has to offer. So that's cool. Pre-charge from the 50-foot line set. You know, your evaporator is pre-assembled. You just got to run your lines, your electric, and pull a vacuum. You're good to go.
Mhm.
That's pretty sweet. Now I did pick up a coil. I don't know if it was your brand or not. Evaporator. It's supposed to have been 404. Open it up. It was I forget what it was. It wasn't
48.
well. The box was marked right, but
Yeah.
the TXV that was in there was wrong. Someone just grabbed the wrong TXV and stuck it in there, and it got passed out. And so I had to change TXV. I was bummed, man. I was like, hey, I just got to run line sets. I'm good to go. And I opened it up, and I was going to charge it. I was like, let me double check this power head. And I was like, oh crap, here we go.
It happens. I mean, we have human error. It happens. It's not that frequent, but it does happen. We build around 10,000 evaporators a year. You're bound to make a mistake every now and then. It happens.
Oh yeah, I'm not knocking nobody. I mean, I make mistakes all the time. It's just part of it. It's a learning experience. Next thing I know, when I get one, I always check it at the supply house where I leave.
Well, I'm glad you
I've made that a habit too. I check anything before I leave the supply house. I've opened up enough busted compressors and all that kind of stuff. Like, nope, before this leaves the counter, I'm checking that thing out myself.
Dude, I got burnt by as a 480, 404 compressor. Water. It was on a water cooled system. The one I had took a short, blew up. Single phase actually, and the generator didn't come on. A single phase and blew it up. I changed it, and the box was beat up. And I opened the supply house, and it was fine. It looked fine. And that thing ran for 10 minutes, and it broke loose inside, locked up. I was like, ever since then, I'm like, I check everything. If the box is broke, beat up, I'm like, no, I'm not taking this. Okay, here's a good question. So, what brand components does Kolpak RDI use? TXVs, dryers, etc.
We used to use Parker receiver tanks, Danfoss filter dryers, and sight glasses. I think we're using Sanwa now, filter dryers and sight glasses, receiver tanks. We're still using, we use Emerson TXVs, solenoids. I think we're using Emerson solenoids as well.
Sweet. And compressors probably just depending on what it's going on.
We use only Copeland compressors right now. We used to have some Danfoss compressors on our package units, the self-contained polar packs. We used to have some Danfoss, but when we changed to 448, we couldn't get the performance out of them. So we're using Copeland scrolls on our polar pack self-package units.
Nice. That's good to know. So what's the smallest polar pack unit you guys make as far as capacity?
We have for coolers, I think we do a 3/4 horse 69 MOP medium temp cooler. And for the freezer, I think we do a 1.5 horse is the smallest for the freezer.
Sweet. So,
what I want to know is tell us about your journey into what you're doing now, Jay. What'd you do before, and how'd you get into this?
So I've only had 2 employers my entire life. And that's odd to be, 57 years old and only have 2 employers. But 17 years old, I decided I wanted to join the Navy. So at 17, I joined the Navy, and I retired at 37 after 20 years in the Navy. Nice. And I had a buddy of mine that I used to go to school with that was the plant manager at McCall in Parsons, Tennessee. Mm-hmm. Used to make undercounters, reach-ins, and he gave me a job as a production supervisor for McCall undercounters, and I ran the undercounter line, making undercounter coolers and freezers, prep tables, pizza prep tables. And we also had the RDI refrigeration at that same facility. And then back several years ago, around 2010, Manitowoc Food Service Group bought the whole conglomerate and comprised of Delfield and some of the hot side stuff to add a hot side to their brand and portfolio. And so we already had Delfield, and they decided they didn't need McCall and Delfield both. They closed McCall and Parsons and relocated it down to Delfield in Covington, Tennessee for a short period of time. Then they finally just decided to just phase out McCall and just sell Delfield. And so I was on the outside looking in thinking, what do I do now? And our sister company, Kolpak, which is in the same city of Parsons, Tennessee, they had an opening in the quality department. So I went over there as a quality tech. And I did that for several years as a quality tech. And then My boss, Clint Reed, came on as the vice president of Kolpak at the time, and he said, "I want you to be the quality manager." And I said, "Well, I don't have a degree." And I think that's required. You got to have a degree to be the quality manager. And he said, "I don't care. I know what you can do. You're capable. I want you to do it." So I became the quality manager, and I did that for a little over a year. And then we had a director of service position open up. He said, "Now I want you to do the director of service." And I said, "I don't want to do the director of service. I like what I'm doing in quality. I know what the director of service is like." I mean, we don't get phone calls and say, "Hey, you're doing a great job." It's always, "I'm mad. This isn't working. You need to fix it now." And so it was a stretch. It was a stretch for me, but I enjoy doing it now. And I'm glad he put me in this role. I feel like I'm making a difference. My team's making a difference. We're trying to help people and make things right. That's what we focus on. We try and make things right. I've been with the company almost 20 years now. So from 2004 to about now. So going on 20 years.
Oh, that's great. So thanks for your service, by the way.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So 2 employers, man, that's rare. That's rare for guys like 22 years old, let alone your age. So
Right.
that's crazy. So I got a couple questions here. Brett Wetzel with the Advanced Refrigeration Podcast. He works for Coolsys. He does their training. He sets up their training and all kinds of stuff. Guy's a freaking genius. He's one of the smartest guys I've ever met. So he wants to know what's the best way to reduce the amount of drain pan freeze ups in the self-contained units. So the little drop throughs. Units are on top. He wants to know what the best way to prevent freeze ups of the drain pan is.
So our polar pack units do have a hot gas condensate in our drain pans to try and cook off a lot of that condensate during defrosts. But if the customer is just abusing the walk-in, and a lot of times that's what it is, they leave the door open too long, or they put hot product inside of it, it's creating much more condensate than that hot gas pan can eliminate. And I've got places that have never had a problem, but I've got some repeat customers that constantly have overflows. And in those cases, we just had them put a drain line to a deck drain somewhere and just go straight from the evaporator out to down the side of a walk-in into a sink or a deck drain or something like that to bypass the hot gas coil drain pan.
I'm glad you said that because I've done that plenty of times.
Yeah. We put some heaters in there before to try and help with that as well, but that's just a lot of cost, and it's really not warranty. I mean, it's the way they're abusing the system is the reason that it's overflowing. So we can tell them how to fix it, but a lot of times we won't pay for that cost. It's really, really cheap to just add some drain tube with a hose clamp down to a deck drain somewhere and just let it go.
Yeah, I had a customer that had one. I don't know if it was a Kolpak, but they had the problem with it, overflowing the drain pan. They put a tube on it, but they ran it uphill to go into a condensate pump. I'm like, still, it's dumping water all over. I'm like, I took pictures. I need to find that, but they literally ran it uphill into a condensate pump, try to pump it out. I'm like, your pump's higher than the drain pan. It's never going to go in there. And you try to explain to people, and they're like, oh, well, we put the pump in there. It'll take care of it. I'm like, yeah, if the pump was hanging on the side of the box, maybe.
Yeah. The hardest part of my job is constantly trying to educate somebody who does not want to be educated.
Boy, ain't that.
It's really, really hard.
Yeah. Really I can agree with that. I can agree with that.
You try and tell them how to fix it, and they just dead set. Now, that's not it. That's not how it's going to fix it. I know what I'm doing. I've been doing this a long time. I'm telling you, this is how it's going to fix it. No, that's not it. It's got to be something else. Got to be something else.
So let's go back to the bolt-on doors. I've installed plenty in the last 12, 15 years. I've done it at schools. I've done it everywhere else. Do you guys have a form you need to fill out in order to order the correct one? So, okay. So
you just reach out to any of my parts team. It's at parts@kolpak.com, or you can call 1-800-225-9916, and they'll send you the form and email. You just fill it out, and they'll give you a quote for it.
Sweet, yeah. I've done a bunch. I mean, it wants to know like electrical for, any switches or control panels. It wants to know electrical for like your door glass heater, if it's got a glass heater or whatnot, and that kind of stuff. And it's pretty simple. I mean, just make sure you use a good quality bolt. I had one that looked like someone used deck screws, and they were wondering why it was about to fall off. And
so we ship nylon bolts from all our bolt over doors so it doesn't have any thermal transfer. And on our website, kolpak.com, we've got videos, self-help videos. There's a how to install a bolt over door video on there. It's about 5 minutes long. Even if somebody's done this a million times, if you look at that video, there may be one thing that you haven't thought of that makes your job easier. There's a million videos out there that you can look at that we've created to make your job a whole lot easier. Anybody can look at them.
Well, I didn't realize you guys sent nylon bolts. So I've never done a Kolpak one apparently. So everything.
So even our evaporators, just our low profile hanging from inside split system evaporators, we send out an install kit with nylon bolts. We've done that for the last, 12, 15 years.
So the purpose of the nylon bolts is, you said, to prevent heat transfer?
Correct. But
I've always wondered, because I hate them.
I still see people with our evaporator with all thread or non-stainless bolts, and you get this drip and it forms an icicle in a freezer, or you get this rust stain on the bottom of the floor where the bolts are dripping down into the walk-in. And I mean, we ship the nylon bolts. I don't know why they don't use it. A lot of times people say they're rated to break, but each bolt is rated at 500 pounds. So, I mean, you're not going to have it break. It's not going to fall.
Dude,
so are you saying that the heat transfer is coming from, like, say, where the bolt's sitting on top of the box?
Yeah.
And then it's absorbing that heat, and then it's coming into the box, and then because of the cold? Right.
So, I mean, if you think on top of a box, most kitchens, if they close it off of closure panels and there's no makeup air or anything on top of that box, it may get up to 95, 100 degrees on top of that box. Well, that's going to transfer down through that metal bolt into a -10 space, and you get condensation. It's going to freeze, form an icicle. And in a cooler, it'll just constantly drip. That's a huge difference in temperature between 90 and 35 or 90 and -10. It transfers. That's why we use nylon bolts. I don't think anybody else even sends an install kit with their evaporators. I think we're the only ones that do. And again, that saves you time. You don't have to run around trying to find all the stuff to do an install. It's already in the box.
The amount of nylon bolts I've thrown away, and now I'm like, holy crap.
Yeah, I have no idea.
I'm always like, these things are junk. I'm like, they're being cheap. That's why they're sending, plastic instead of metal.
I'm going to have to use nylon bolts. So, I mean, you've got 4 bolts in each evaporator. That's 2,000 pounds.
Yeah.
It's not going to fall.
I had no idea. Yeah. So I learned a lot just right there. So now I feel like an asshole every time I just I take them out, the old ones, and I just run all thread through there because look at all these nylon bolts are junk. Now I'm Now I'm sourcing nylon bolts for all of my walk-ins that aren't cold.
Hey, you can buy from us. We got nylon bolt install kits, 4, 6, or 8. You can call them. We got a part number set up. We can ship them to you. Grab about a dozen, keep them on your truck.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, I'm going to do that. I told you he knows a lot of stuff that we'd never think of.
Dude, that's crazy. I never even thought of it. I just thought, like you said, those being cheap nylon bolts.
It's not a cost down.
It's probably not even any cheaper, honestly.
No, it's probably not.
So that's crazy. So what's some of the craziest stuff you've seen here lately? I mean, I've seen some crazy stuff you posted on social media, but any horror stories you want to talk about? Or
I got lots of stuff to talk about. I don't know what our time limit is, but I'll start with just a couple, and you can tell me if we've run out of time. But I know my team in the summertime, the tech service guys, I got 4 guys, and they do amazing work, especially in the summertime. And y'all know what the summertime's like.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's nonstop. We'll take my team will take anywhere from 150 to 200 calls a day in the summertime because it's just so busy. But the hardest part that they deal with is they'll get a tech that will call them and say, "Okay, I'm here. What do I do?" And they say, "What do you mean? What do you do?" Well, my boss said, "Just show up and call you, and you walk me through what I need to do." And they say, "Okay, what's the problem?" "Well, it's not running." "Well, did you check incoming voltage?" "Well, how do I do that?" "Well, if you got a voltmeter, what's a voltmeter?" "No, we're not doing this." We'll find somebody else. I mean, it happens. I mean, it's not fair to that technician, though, for these companies. I know it's hard to find good talent, and people are struggling trying to find technicians right now. But to send somebody out there has absolutely no idea what they're doing and expect us to teach them basic refrigeration on the job, we just can't do it. I mean, we've got too many calls a day. We don't have the time. So a lot of times we'll just say, just go back. We'll call another service company out there to try and help. And, I mean, I know you guys are struggling trying to find quality talent out there for service techs too, but that happens a lot in the summertime. It does.
Yeah, and that comes from managers trying to just get bodies, and that term, I use that term loosely. It drives me nuts. Anytime I hear a manager say a body, I want to scream at the top of my lungs.
Yeah.
They say capture the call.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what they're trying to do, but there's got to be a better way to do it. If a guy doesn't have any idea how to use basic meters, he doesn't need to be on his own yet.
Right. Or gauges. I mean, they don't even know what a gauge is. They don't know how to hook it up or let alone read it. But
there's Jason chiming in. He wasn't feeling
they're doing. I mean, but again, I mean, are they really doing a service to the company or the customer by just sending somebody out there who doesn't know what they're doing?
And they're doing a disservice to the technician too, right? Because I mean, this is a great field that has a lot of potential, but you throw a technician in a situation where he's way in over his head and doesn't even have the fundamental principles to get himself out of the situation, or at least call you and give you some basic readings. Well,
Right.
he's not going to have a positive experience in this, and then before you know it, 3 months in, he's like, screw that field. It's trash. It's garbage. And it's like, no, dude, you had potential, but the people above you, they're the ones that actually failed you. So, yeah, it's not fair to anybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in wintertime when it's slow, I mean, if we've got time, we may walk some young guy through and kind of help him out. But in the summertime, with just the call volume, we just can't. We just don't have the time. I mean,
and
I'd
his
rather
first call should be. Oh, go ahead, my bad. You go ahead. You get. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
We'll call the service company that's in our network and say, hey, we need you. We need you to go out to this job site, and they'll send somebody.
Yeah, the technician's first call should be his service manager to walk him through that type of stuff. But I guess in some places, service managers aren't really worth anything, anyway. So I guess they just figure out, the factory can handle it. But yeah, no, that's like as we said earlier, that's not fair to anybody. That's not right.
So we're kind of unique as well that we don't have to have a Kolpak factory authorized service company send a technician to do our warranty work. We'll take anybody.
Yep, that's awesome.
And if you think about it, with a walk-in, I've got gaps in coverage. I've got over 400 service companies across the United States as part of our service network, but I've still got gaps in a lot of places. And we need somebody to go out and run a call. It could be anybody, maybe an HVAC guy, and we may have to walk through it. But, I mean, we'll allow them to do that service work. And a lot of times the people that are sending these young guys out here, they're not part of our network. We rarely have one of our factory authorized service companies send a tech out that doesn't know what they're doing and say, how do I do this? It's usually the non-FAS companies that are sending these guys.
I got a warranty call for Kolpak last week, and the first person I messaged was Jay. He's like, do you need help? I was like, well, I'm not the guy running. If he needs help, I'll make sure I get a hold of you. I was excited. I was like, yes, Kolpak called us. Thank you. And I work for the big giant company, so we don't know how it is.
Even if technicians can't get through, a lot of times they'll text me or call me and say, hey, I'm on the rooftop. I need some help. And I'll reach one of my guys and say, as soon as you hang up your call this guy back. He's on the rooftop. And we try and do that. I mean, I think the guys that right now are answering calls, I don't think we've got anything over 2 minutes long in our queue for service. They're doing an amazing job.
That's sweet.
Wow.
So I got a pretty good comment here. And Quentin Webb's, it's a family-owned small business. Their service company. He does really good work. And he says these big box service companies have more capital to spend on training than us small guys, yet they neglect the very thing that can make them money-making powerhouses. And, yeah, it just seems like a lot of companies just neglect the training side. I mean, and I say this all the time, it seems like they're more worried about the dollars they're going to lose, that guy not being in the field, versus the dollars they're going to gain by having that guy go to class. I mean, I tell my boss all the time, like, look, you just see the initial dollar that said we're going to lose. I said, what happens if we lose this manufacturer in the long run because no one's trained on it? That's going to hurt us a lot more than that week that guy's got on training.
Yeah. So we've got a pretty good training program. I can talk about that real quick.
Go for it.
3 years ago, me and Derek and Brooks have decided we want to start doing training for Kolpak factory authorized service companies in our network for the techs. And for the last 3 years, we'll go out January, February, and March of each year, and we'll hold 2 trainings each month. Second week in January and the last week in January, and then we'll do second week in February, or the last week in February, and so on. But we'll ask some of our factory authorized service companies if they want to host the training. And if they got enough room, sometimes they get 20 or 30 spots available. They may send 4 or 5 techs from their own company, but we'll send out invites to the rest of the service companies in that area, and they'll send technicians. This year alone, I think we're about 250 techs that we've trained so far this year. We kind of stop it in March because that's when things get busy and people really can't afford to have a technician sit in a class for 8 hours. But the class is free. It's 8 hours a day. It's free. We start at 8 o'clock in the morning. We talk about walk-in fundamentals. We ship a little small training walk-in. We actually do hands-on. They actually assemble the walk-in. We break for lunch, and then we'll come in and talk about refrigeration, a lot of the controls that we use for refrigeration, and we answer questions for the rest of the day. But it's free. Even lunch is provided to the tech. They just have to show up.
Yeah, I'm trying for Indy.
Sweet.
I'm trying. I got the room, so I'm hoping.
Yeah, how do we get one?
We'll make it happen. But we've already got 2024 already planned, and I think we're going to see Rich up in New Jersey. He's going to host for us. We're going to be down in Miami. We're going to be in Chicago. We're going to be in, let's see, I don't have my list right in front of me, somewhere in Georgia and Pensacola.
Well,
so we've got it, and I'll put it out on LinkedIn when it's available. Later on the end of this year, I'll put it out. But I'm still trying to work with you to try and get something together. We're doing some training out in North Carolina this fall in November. They had a service company that had about 12 techs that they wanted to train, and that's a little slow. So we decided we'd set it up just kind of impromptu. We're going to go out there and do some training for their techs one-on-one. And again, it's free.
Yeah, that's awesome. You come to Indy,
that's real awesome.
We'll have to meet up and smoke a cigar.
Yeah. Same if you come to South Carolina.
Ditto.
Yeah, and I was talking to Dan Reese with Cefessa. Do you know Dan?
With who?
Dan Reese at Cefessa. He's their training guy. So we were talking today because I do some refrigeration training for him, and they're trying to update the whole refrigeration program. It's pretty old now, Dave. We're trying to bring it to the newer refrigerants, the newer technologies, that kind of stuff. When I go, I use a press gun. You may hate it, but I have a RLS system I use. I bring it out there and let the guys see it as a viable option. When you can't braze in a situation, you can use this. It's never going to replace brazing 100%, but it is an option out there for certain situations. I'm not going to be the guy so you got to use this for everything. I mean, everything has its option in place, but I do that. So, Dan was talking about, we're trying to figure out how to bring it up to newer standards, get it out of it's a lot of PowerPoint now. We're trying to get more hands-on, trying to get some more equipment and stuff. I told Dan, I said, I'll talk to Jay and see if Jay will talk to you, see what we can do to help you out. So
he reached out to me, and I think he wants us to do a training class with him sometime in this fall in Atlanta.
So October, there's an October class. It's a 5-day refrigeration class, and then there's one in March. I'm going to do the March one. I'm not doing the fall. I got in trouble, so I can't teach fall. So I got to wait till spring. But that's a whole nother topic. I love Cefessa and the things they do. If you haven't noticed, I get a little passionate sometimes, and sometimes I say some stuff that gets me in trouble. And I go,
what? No.
You better watch out, Rich. You're next.
Bring it. No, I'm not playing.
It's a great organization. They do a lot. I want to see a lot more for the guys, and that's all I'm trying to do. So Quentin Webb has another question for you. Man, this guy's a wealth of knowledge. I just need to bring him on the show. He wants to know if you guys thought about partnering up with supply houses like Johnstone or Airco to host trainings.
So, yes, we've actually had dealers as well. I mean, there's a demand constantly for us to do trainings 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. But I just have so many resources, and we're limited in what we can do. We are going to do some training for a Great Lake Hotel Supply up in Michigan sometime next month, I think. There's lots of dealers that want to do trainings, and we try and accommodate as much as we can. We just limit on resources and people and travel. I mean, I travel a lot.
So I know, since the Ollie Group purchase, I've talked to some other people. I'm friends with some other directors of service, some other service people in other companies, sister companies. And I know that Ollie Group's trying to put a bigger focus back on the training side. They're trying to focus on training. The equipment's only as good as the guys you have taking care of the equipment. If that equipment's broken, no one can fix it. It just makes them look bad. And so they're trying to do a bigger approach to training and that kind of stuff. And I'm glad to see it's getting back to that. I've been a huge fan of Well-Built, all the companies for years and years and years. And I'm glad to see everyone's trying to do their own thing again. They're all trying to operate a little more independently. And I'm glad to see that that's making a big comeback. And I'm looking forward to catching some training. I'm sure my boss isn't going to let me do too much, but I'll weasel my way into something somewhere for sure.
So we travel, like I said, every January, February, and March, but we're also trying to create a new training room at Kolpak in Parsons, Tennessee, for people that want to send teams down to Kolpak. We'll train right there at Kolpak. Plus, you get a plant tour and you can see how things are made. I mean, that plant tour is really, really worthwhile.
See, I got some friends out there. So we have I'm friends with Matt Wheeler over at Cason. Do you guys use Cason parts?
Yes, we do.
See, so he wants us to come down there and tour their facility in Atlanta. Maybe we can go to Atlanta and tour the facility.
Absolutely.
Jay,
Love to have you.
And then we can come over. We can tour Kolpak and do all that stuff.
Yeah.
I think it's a good
so
opportunity.
we got to do a manufacturer tour. Start scheduling some dates.
I like it.
I'm down, man. It's only probably 6-7 hour drive for me. I don't know about you, but
yeah, I'll make it happen.
That's a long way across Tennessee, man. That's a long state, east to west, dude.
Yeah, it is. Luckily, I love Tennessee, so it'll be a nice ride.
Yep. So, all right. What else we got? Quentin Webb, Ali is a top-notch group. When they bought Wellbuilt instead of Middleby, getting him, it was a huge relief. Yeah, that was a wild ride there for a while. They announced it, and the next thing you know, it went away, and Ali Group came in, and
Yeah.
it's been a warm welcome, I think.
Yeah.
Just
I
like
think it's a good fit.
any big merger conglomerate, there's always hiccups and stuff. But I think it's a pretty good fit from everything I've seen as far as the service side. And like I said, I have a pretty good relationship with a lot of service people, and they all seem pretty happy with it. So sweet. So how big's the facility there in Tennessee? Your factory?
Square footage, or we have about 250 employees, depending on what time of year it is. Right now, we're only running one shift, but we've COVID is really changed how we manufacture. I mean, it kind of forced our hand on how we do things. We used to have two shifts. We weren't very efficient on the second shift, and we realized that we put everybody on one shift, we're a lot more efficient. And we were cranking out a lot more square footage a day on one shift than we were with two shifts. And it's a lot cheaper on us. We're not paying overtime in the second shift, but we're doing a lot better now, square footage wise. I think a busy day would be 14,000 square foot of panels a day, and we may do 40 to 50 condensing units and evaporators a day. We'll on a busy day, 15 to 20 walk-ins a day are shipping out of our facility. So that means every day, 15 to 20 walk-ins across the United States are being installed somewhere, and sometimes very poorly.
Oh, cool. I see your email. It said a 3-week wait time for most boxes and stuff. That's pretty.
And that's an engineered box. That's an engineered box. Yeah.
That's a good wait time.
Yeah,
we had one that we've been waiting like a year for that we're going to install in 2 weeks now.
So I think a lot of the other manufacturers don't want to do custom, and they'll tell customers we want to do that, and they'll say call Kolpak, and that's kind of what we do. I mean, if nominal boxes are so much cheaper and faster for us and for the customer, but for some reason, I don't understand the mentality behind it. If they got a spot that's 10 foot, 2.5 inches, they want a box that's 10 foot, 2.5 inches instead of going a nominal size that doesn't need to be engineered. And it's more expensive that way.
So
still willing to pay for it, though.
Yeah.
EC to Fix is your neighbor. He's over in Nashville. He takes care of, I think he works in some pretty big hotel or something downtown. So he does a little bit of everything.
Come by for a plant tour. You're only about 90 miles west.
There you go. You better get over there. Sweet. So is Arctic Fox part of Kolpak RDI, or is that?
We've got two different things labeled Arctic Fox. We used to have a temp control, just standard temp control that was labeled Arctic Fox. It was made by Ketotherm. Mm-hmm. We're no longer using them. We're using Johnson A421 controllers. But we do have a demand defrost evaporator that's labeled Arctic Fox. That's also made by Ketotherm. The controls are made by Ketotherm.
So I'm not going to beat up anybody here. So probably 7-8 years ago, there was a big hospital built in Indianapolis, and they had Arctic Fox units in there, and it was the full-fledged electric boards.
You said how many years ago?
Probably 8 years ago.
Yeah, we actually designed our own board a long time ago when we first came out with it. We designed our own board and did all the testing, and it was Arctic Fox. It had a little UI display, a little black display that had green LEDs on it that usually sat on the outside, and we couldn't manage it. It was cumbersome, so we decided to go with Ketotherm, and we relabeled and retooled, and they make the controls for us now.
We ended up ripping it all out because it was always error after error after error. It was cool. I was like, the first time I see it, I freaked out. It was the first time I seen like expansion valves and that kind of stuff. I was like, oh, what is all this? This is crazy. This is devil stuff. And it was cool, but it had a lot of issues, probe issues, moisture issues, that kind of stuff. And I was sad to see it rip out, but we went in there, ripped it out, put in normal stuff, and it's just kind of
our new Arctic Fox demand defrost. A lot of schools are starting to pick up and buy it, and it's an amazing system. I mean, a lot of old school technicians don't like it because it's like magic or something, but it runs like a champ. I mean, for electric defrost, your standard defrost time clock is 4 times a day. Whether you need it or not, it's going to go into 4 defrosts, and that's a lot of energy. And this Arctic Fox demand defrost system has reduced that to 1 a day. So you're going from 120 defrost a month to 30. That's a huge energy savings.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of defrost on demand. I don't know about you, Rich, but like you said, you talking earlier, too many defrosts a day leads to moisture issues. Everyone thinks, it's coming out, the fans are coming on too soon, or it's in defrost too long. Well, too many defrosts will do it too.
Well, not only that, but food safety. I mean, look at how the temperature swings you have by doing 120 defrost a month versus just 30. And this demand defrost system, it can maintain a half a degree if you want it to.
Oh, wow.
That's great.
I haven't done enough with on-demand defrost. Honestly, like boxes that we put in that have that option, we usually just set it to, time, or however you want to call it, like scheduled defrost, not on-demand. But it is on-demand. Is it really reliable? That's the thing. I know when they started first doing on-demand stuff, I seen a lot of issues where stuff just seemed to not be defrosting properly. So I just kind of steered away from it. But you're saying it's pretty reliable?
So we had a McDonald's close to us in Henderson, Tennessee, that has a freezer in their basement, and it's the first one I've seen. But it was 100% humidity in that basement. And if anybody knows McDonald's, when they load it, they leave that door open for like an hour while they're loading all the product in it. And this was like an ice cave. I've never seen anything like it. I'll try and find some pictures to post on LinkedIn. But it was just a snow cave every time they loaded. And the only thing different we did is remove that evaporator and put its demand defrost evaporator in it, and it took care of all of it. It managed it. It handled all that humid air.
Explain demand defrost. I know kind of, the basic theory behind it, but not well enough. So, yeah, would you mind explaining it?
So you've got an electronic expansion valve in there, and you've got a board that has sensors attached to it. We've got an air in sensor on the back side of the evaporator and an air out sensor on the front side of the evaporator, and it measures the difference in temperature. And when you first power up one of these evaporators, it'll go through a defrost 7 or 8 times in the first 24 hours, just so it's trying to figure out and calculate what is my clear coil. And once it knows that, it's constantly checking that, and it only defrosts when it knows it needs to do it.
Okay.
Sweet.
And then, so how does it know the length of time to defrost, or is it just a termination?
It's all
by temperature or what?
Yeah, in and out.
Okay.
It measures it and calculates, and it knows what that temperature needs to be for a clear coil. And if it's not a clear coil, it'll go into a defrost.
I think I need to give it a shot again. Nice.
And again, it may not be a 30-minute defrost. It may only need 5 minutes to clear the coil.
Right.
Do you guys use primarily just heaters, or do you use hot gas, or what do you?
We don't use any hot gas. It's all heaters.
Nice. That's pretty cool.
Why is that? Why heaters and not hot gas?
We just think that the heaters do a better job than hot gas does.
Probably ease of installation.
I agree.
You don't have that third line running over there, and
Yeah.
that's another issue. That's just runtime of compressors or anything else too. So that's cool. That's cool. Nasty HVACR. Wait, at McDonald's about a heat craft. Yeah. So Brian Sanders wants to know if it's an A421 OBD. Is that what you guys are using for the controller?
I don't know about the OBD. I think it is, yeah.
Okay.
So we've got, for air defrost, it also has, time clock built into it for defrost time clock on air defrost. And for the freezer, you have to have a separate defrost time clock. We've had some issues with the air defrost, people thinking that they're missing a defrost time clock, and they're not. It's built in, and we have it set, I think, 3 times a day for the air defrost. But some people just don't see the defrost time clock and think they need to add it, and then they're fighting each other because that 421 is doing defrost, and then the separate electronic defrost time clock is also scheduling defrost for it.
Yeah, I can see that being a huge issue. So, yeah.
Another thing I like to hear you talk about, if you don't mind, is TXVs versus EEVs. So that's another thing that's a
EEVs all day. I'd rather have them.
And why?
There's multiple reasons. The TXV, it has to be adjusted properly, and a lot of techs don't know how to adjust the TXV. They just don't. And the EV is just automatic. You don't have to worry about adjusting. It's going to constantly set your superheat no matter what ambient conditions you've got. Wintertime, summertime, it doesn't matter. It's going to constantly open and close that valve to maintain the proper superheat and the temperature.
I like it, man. Like I said, the first time I see an EEV, I freaked out. Absolutely was paranoid, freaked out. And now, like I see a TXV, I'm like, oh, great. Here I go. This is adding an hour onto my job. I got to let it get cold and go in here and check it, and then hopefully it's right.
So we have a lot of TXVs replaced, and I don't think they're bad. I just don't think the tech understands how to adjust it properly, so they just replace it. Our TXVs come in, I want to say preset, but they're kind of like mid-range. Yeah. And there's no way really for us to adjust them in-house because we can't connect the system together to get the refrigerant flowing and actually make it. So we ship it out mid-range, and for the most part, a lot of times it works. But if the site conditions dictate otherwise, they have to be adjusted. And a lot of techs don't know how to do it. So they just say it's not metering correctly. Let's just replace it.
Your best friend, if you're chasing a TXV, you got to adjust it, is a wireless gauge. You can sit outside where it's warm and okay, I'm getting close. You look at your phone, you're like, oh, okay, let me go in here and adjust this. You go outside, you go back outside for 15 minutes. I'm getting closer. Yeah, that's the best thing to do.
It's tough when
your second best friend is patience.
I started off as hot side and then switched to refrigeration, picked up refrigeration. And that was my biggest issue with patience, because I was like, hot side, I fix this oven, it's up to temperature in 15 minutes, see you later. You fix a cooler, you fix a freezer, it's been at 40 degrees, it's full of food, and like all of a sudden it's like 32 degrees and it's not moving. You're like, oh shit, is it broke? Is it just the product? What is it? You're like, you start freaking out. Your mind starts playing tricks on you. Then all of a sudden you're trying to diagnose something. And it's like, wait a second, chill out. It's the product. The product's warm. Give us some time. Come back in the morning. If you did what you think you did, see you later. Check on it the next day.
Yeah.
That latent heat will get you every time.
Oh, yeah.
So let's say I have a box and I want to change the refrigeration system. I want to, whatever's in here is bad, back compressor, it's got a major leak, whatever. And I want to go in with an RDI. Who do I contact? Just go to my local supplier that carries RDI, or can I contact you with?
Yeah, you can reach out to me and I can find out what area you're in and see who's the closest one in your area for RDI. Yeah, that's the best way to do it.
And then let them size it. I don't
size it. I mean, we can help you size. We've got an Excel spreadsheet it's got a lot of questions it asks. It's got algorithms, and it'll tell you the proper size. And we also have a lot of people. This bites a lot of people, but they oversize the refrigeration because they think, well, if a 1 horse is good, then a 3 horse has got to be even better.
Yep,
and it's not. It's worse actually if you oversize the box.
When I size a system, I always let supply house handle it. I've done it a few times. It's just easier for me to let them size it. And generally, I go in with box measurements, wall thickness, floor type, environment. If it's inside the building, outside the building. There's a lot of information you got to get.
There is.
To get and use. To give to the people who are designing it for you. But generally, let supply house handle it. I didn't know if that was something that Kolpak offered. Say if I would call in and say, hey, I'm building this unit. I'm going with RDI. This is my specs. What do you recommend? So.
We can.
I have trust issues, so I do it myself.
But I mean, a lot of people don't size properly. And again, we have a lot of schools and a lot of people think that, like I said, that they want to make sure they have enough refrigeration, so they oversize it. But if you think about a school, they're really low usage. They're not like a McDonald's or a Taco Bell that's running 20 hours a day. I mean, they come in at 6 a.m. and by 1 o'clock they're done, and the box is not used the rest of the time. And so you run into a lot of problems with moisture in it not dehumidifying that box because it's not running long enough. It's satisfied and it stays shut.
So they're in the box 5 to 8 times a day, and that's it. I've got a brand new school. Actually, it's not brand new school; it's an old school. They remodeled the kitchen. I've been in there doing some stuff for them, and I think it's Kolpak. I'll have to look and see. I'm pretty sure it was Kolpak doors, but the heated glass it's a heated glass on the freezer and cooler doors are both glass and they're both heated. But the one doesn't work, and they're complaining because of moisture. It's ungodly hot in Indiana. It's an old school. Yeah, it's got a bunch of moisture in the glass. I put my hand on it. I was like, the glass is room temp. I was like, the glass is cold. I'm like, your heater's not working. So
the freezers have heated frames and heated glass. The coolers just have heated frames.
Okay.
And so if you got moisture and condensation and one of those heaters is not working and it needs to be swapped out, but we can swap it out.
I'm supposed to go back next week. I'll check it, make sure. I told her to call the installer to make sure it was installed right first because they just turned it over last week. I didn't want to get in a pissing match because the GC was there and I was working on something else and he kind of threw a fit. I was doing what I was doing because the factory called me and he didn't get to call me. So it is what it is. So I told GC to call the installers, have them look at it first, and then go from there. But it's a terrible place. It's everything's sweating. Indiana's terrible right now. I'm sure Tennessee is. It's 97 degrees today, 100% humidity. It feels like you go outside, you can't breathe. I go into the kitchen. It's 72 degrees in there, but I'm checking humidity, and it's 75% humidity. I'm like, of course everything's going to sweat and hold moisture.
We've got it on all of our drawings or prints for the walk-in state. There's a note down there that states that outside the walk-in has to maintain 75 degrees or less and 55% relative humidity or less. And I know a lot of people say, well, I haven't seen a kitchen yet that can do that. There's plenty out there that are doing it because they're not calling us. They're not having issues. It's those places that are not having their HVAC tuned just right to remove all that humidity. We've seen steam kettles right beside a freezer door with the vent hood not working. I mean, that's 99% humidity right outside your freezer door. I mean, you can see the door when they open the door up, it's just a fog that just rolls in. I mean, every time they open that door, you get a fog roll in. And they say it's just a problem with the walk-in. It's not. It's a problem with your kitchen environment and your steam kettle and your vent hood not working. HVAC is not keeping up. A lot of places turn off their HVAC at night on weekends to save energy. And then the first thing Monday morning when they open that door, it's 99% humidity rolling right into that walk-in. And it takes forever to keep up.
That's the first thing I do when I see sweating in the kitchen, because the customer's calling because a reach-in cooler sweat or a display cooler, in this case, is sweating. The first thing I do is I find a maintenance guy. What's your night setback? Oh, 80 degrees. 80 degrees, really? What time you turn back? 7:30 when they start serving. I'm like,
it never catches up. Yeah, it never catches up.
Oh yeah. You always have to be able to look at external factors whenever you're dealing with refrigeration. I think that's where a lot of people screw up. Is right away they want to start messing with the box, checking pressures, doing this, doing that, and it's like, dude, you just walked through 100-degree kitchen. Let's start there first.
Yeah, and we've had this conversation several times. Like the biggest part about refrigeration is outside factors.
Oh yeah.
It's rarely the refrigeration. It's always ambient temperature,
environmentals and how they're operating it. Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing how people think that, let's put this condensing unit on top of this walk-in cooler and box it in so it's technically in an attic. You get up there.
120 degrees, yeah.
You get there in the winter and it's 100 degrees.
Yeah.
Like, I was talking to you today about that walk-in freezer I was working on. It was so hot on that ceiling that there was literally liquid in the freezer, 4 inches down, and then ice started to form where it got far enough away where it got cold. I was like, this is insane.
Yeah.
I'm like, this isn't right, people. I'm like, leave an air gap there or something. I was like, you guys are just doing yourself a disservice. That moisture and that is getting in that roof panels eventually, and it's going to start tearing stuff up, but they don't want to hear it.
And stop putting boxes up there too.
No, I've said so many pictures on LinkedIn. You can see where they just use as storage. We had one location had 50-pound bags of rock salt on top of the walk-in as a storage place, and a hot water heater. They installed a hot water heater on top of the walk-in. I mean, it's not storage. It's not designed for that.
It sounds like a win.
I seen one the other week where the guy had, the line set was pretty much laying on the top of the box, and he had ladders and all kinds of stuff right on the line set. And I'm like, oh, dude, you're asking for it.
So I got to
take the ladder, put it somewhere else.
I got a wing place that's famous for it, man. They put everything in there, and they used to put the condensing units on top of there, and now they're actually starting to put them on the roof because they realize, there are people who are going to put shit up there. And, dude, I'd get there and be like, oh, the freezer's at 40-some degrees. You get there and it's tripped on head pressure, and you peek your head at the ceiling tile and you see all the dust is disturbed. Then you look and they got boxes right up against the condenser coil. I'm like,
can't even breathe.
And then I got one store. I was actually there today, but they ran the grease lines from the fryers to the grease in the back across there, and it ruptured above the freezer. And every time they pumped the grease out, it was just pouring all over the condensing unit on top of there. Mm-hmm. And they're like, oh, can you clean that up? I'm like, no, call your grease company. There's no way I'm cleaning 200 pounds of solid shortening on top of your walk-in freezer off the condensing unit. I'm looking at
that's not in my job scope. Yeah, that's not in my scope of work.
I was like, no. I was like, call a cleaning company. I was like, figure this out. I'm not doing it. I'm sorry. So, sweet. So, I had someone ask me about sales. How do we educate our sales team to do a better job when they look at a site or when they're determining what a customer needs? Besides, I hate to be mean to salespeople, but I'm going to do it. I mean, most times it seems like they just see dollar signs. That's all they care about is dollar signs, and the rest falls on the back end.
So site surveys are very, very critical. We talked about that prior to the show going live, but I mean, site surveys are very critical and they need to be done correctly. You can't halfway do them. It ends up biting the service company that's doing the install, and it ends up biting the manufacturer in the long run if the site surveys aren't done properly. Level floors are so critical for a walk-in. I mean, for all the other kitchen equipment, it's really not that critical, but for a walk-in, it's critical. If the floor is not level, everything else after that is it's going to be trouble for the life of that walk-in. And some of these walk-ins last for 30, 40 years. You don't want to have to chase that for 30 or 40 years. So I try and educate a lot of the service companies that are doing installs to tell a GC, no, If the floor's not level, I'm not installing this walk-in. And if they ever have any issues with that and GC says you're going to do it, reach out to me. I don't mind talking to that GC and telling them there is no warranty on this walk-in if you continue this install. That usually gets them to say, okay, we need to do something. We need to do something. Because it is that critical.
Speaking of warranty, because this is something that gets me, I think I see where a lot of GCs, find the lowest bidder to do the install on the walk-in. And I see it because then I'm there doing a warranty call. How do you guys as the manufacturer not have any control over who's doing the install? If you contract us to do the install, or you tell the GC, hey, these are our factory authorized, service providers. Well, then if we screw up the install, you guys have, recourse, possibly with our company. But if they have, Pepe's Tacos and HVAC install the walk-in and they do a screwed up job, then you're out there paying us, hundreds, maybe thousands of dollars to clean up the mess. How does that work? And how do y'all not have any say in that?
I would love to have total control over all of our installs, but we can't. It's different for, I don't want to pick on the undercounters and reach-ins, but our sister company, Delfield, how hard is it to roll in an undercounter and plug it in? What's the startup it takes? How long does that take? Some of our walk-ins are construction projects. They may take 2 to 3 weeks to do the entire project. Again, I would love to control the entire install. We just can't. But a lot of times if there is a problem, we send you out there and it's install related, we won't pay for it. We'll go back to the GC and say, we're not fixing this. This was an install related issue and you hired the installer. You need to fix it and make it right. And a lot of times it makes the customer angry, because they're expecting us to stand behind our product. It's not our issue. It was done from a bad install. I mean, we deal with that every day, bad installs every day.
Yeah, we catch.
So then you want a lot of documentation then showing, hey, this is what was wrong, that was what was wrong, so you can that back and say, hey, not our problem.
So again, if Kolpak will dispatch one of our service companies to a job site, we're going to pay you, period. If anything, just for diagnosing. But we're never going to say, well, that's not warranty, we're not paying you. That's not the case. If we dispatch you, we're going to cover your travel and your diagnosis. We may not have you do anything else beyond that. We may just send you back and say, thank you for all the information. We'll get with the GC and we'll find out how they're going to fix it going forward. Or they may actually want you to fix it, but you'll invoice them directly instead of coming back to Kolpak.
Right.
That's great information. So many times we go out there, and not just refrigeration, everything, we go out there, especially it happens more on existing kitchens where, new equipment's brought in and, the line was originally made with a 2-inch gas line and, a 7-inch water column system. And now all of a sudden you've got, 8 million BTUs versus the 4 million BTUs it was designed for, and you're running gas issues. And the moment you say that, hey, you don't have enough gas for this, you're the bad guy. The manufacturer's the bad guy. The sales guy is never the bad guy. I don't know why they're telling like, resist. It should work. I mean, it's sad that it comes down like that. I mean, because we get put in the middle, you get put in the middle, and it's unfortunate. So I think, like you said, educate our sales teams, our dealer reps, and that group that understand, do a job better. We were talking earlier, and I said, what would be great is if these sales groups or rep groups hired a guy that can't be a technician anymore, maybe he's retired or whatnot, to be a part of their team, say, hey, we're going to an existing kitchen or we're going to look at this. What kind of input do you have? What should we look for? This is what we have here. Maybe show them some pictures. They don't want to go. What's some of the things to look for before we, tell the customer they can do this? I think that'd go a long ways of making it.
I agree.
Make it easier. I mean, the just things up front. I mean, no one wants to be going out to do an install and, they have a 3/4 stub there and all of a sudden I got a piece of equipment that requires a 1-inch stub of gas. And it's just, it's not going to work. I mean, yeah, you can adapt it to 1 inch, but guess what? It's still choked down to 3/4. You're still going to have issues, just like you said, the floor's not level. We've heard horror stories from some of the guys on here about ripping down 2x4s and sticking under floor panels to get it level in the freezer.
I've got all kinds of bad photos of bad installs. We've got thousands of pictures of what not to do. I'll tell people now, the best thing to use, we've had people say that the GC wants to use sand in a pit to try and level the walk-in. I don't like sand. Sand moves, it shifts.
Yeah.
But it's cheap. That's why they want to do it. But what we recommend is shingles, roofing shingles, 30-year shingles. Just go buy a tab of them. You can break them off in thirds. They don't move. They don't rot. You can stack them up. It's just the greatest thing in the world to level out a floor inside of a walk-in is shingles.
Man, I'm learning all kinds of stuff from Jay today.
Right? I like that. I never would have thought of that. I like that.
It doesn't matter what color it is. You can buy the cheap ones that are on sale. Just throw one bundle on your truck so you have them. And They're so much better than anything else. But I've got horror stories of people using untreated lumber and underneath this, and it rots after about 6 months, and then the floor's sagging in a certain spot because they tried to cut corners on the leveling.
Yeah, I wish I knew that when I was spending a day and a half cutting 2x4s to make shims. I wish I would have known about shingles back then.
How do you fix a floor like that that's shifting so bad the panels are pulling apart and stuff like that? Is there any?
It really depends on how much of a gap that you've got, or how much out of square or out of level it is. I mean, I think we say no more than half an inch for every 10 feet of floor run. But I know I've seen pictures out there where there's 4 inches underneath the floor panel. And,
wow.
I mean, they never should have got that far and installed that. I mean, that's just crazy. I mean, you can't do it.
Holy cow, that is nuts.
Yeah. I mean, the easiest thing to do, and I don't know why people don't have these. If you don't, you should go out and buy one. Just get one of those little lasers and just set it on the floor and shoot a line out and go there and just check in a couple spots with your tape measure to see how much out of level it is. It's real easy to do. It's quick. It doesn't take 10 seconds to see if your floor is level before you even start.
Yeah, Amazon, you can buy one for like $60 for a tripod.
They're not that expensive.
It runs on batteries.
If you want to use it for everything, you can put it in for, leveling out your drain line and all this other stuff. I mean, it's got multiple uses. It's not a one-time use. You can use it a lot.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to go buy the $500 Milwaukee one unless you want to buy it. I mean, I bought mine. The one I have is literally like $60 on Amazon. It takes AA batteries. I use it for everything. When I was doing my drywall upstairs, I literally put it on vertical and like told my son I'd mark the studs and I'd be like, here. I put a screw in each stud and I said, here.
Yeah.
Put the vertical line. I said, run them up and down this, move it to each screw, and he did it. And it worked great. So yeah, $60 tool. That's like excellent. Yeah. So.
We have had a lot of people trying to use sand, and like I said, sand does shift, and then they want to know what they can do about the floor because it bounces wherever that low spot is. We tell people that you can run Tapcon screws down through this panel and grab the concrete underneath to pull the panel down. That keeps it from bouncing. You still got that void under there, and the floor may actually sag in the center inside the walk-in, but if you're worried about it bouncing up and down, that's the easiest way to do it. Just use a Tapcon screw and pull it down flush to the bottom of that concrete.
So Greg Austin says cedar roofing shingles too. So yeah, they don't rot. So that's pretty good.
They don't rot. I'd still rather have shingles. They really don't rot.
Yeah, Austin Mueller. So we all know Austin. Good guy, good company. So I've been using shingles for years.
He's about an hour and a half from me.
Is he? Sweet.
Yeah.
I love them, man. Those guys they're pretty good crew over there.
He hosted training a couple years ago to his facility.
Sweet. Yeah. That's cool. So that's a good tip, man. Never would have thought of that ever. That's cool. I've learned a lot of stuff tonight. I hope everyone else did too. It's been
a ton.
Dude, I know it. We're going to have him on again. We can have Jason on. Jason wasn't feeling well tonight, so he had to bow out. So I'd love to have you on again, and we can get more depth in refrigeration.
Absolutely.
What else we got? So Rich says, Austin, say hi to Dustin for him. That's cool. So I won't keep you much longer. It's been an hour. We're going to have to definitely do this again because this is way too easy.
Absolutely.
This was the easiest hour I've ever done, so I appreciate it.
I enjoyed it.
So, any last tips or tricks or anything you want to give the listeners or the viewers before we take off, as far as walk-ins, installs, anything?
Educate the customer, and if you don't know, please reach out to my team and ask before you do anything. It's so much easier to help you, guide you during the process than to try and fix it after the fact. It's difficult fixing stuff, but that's our job. I mean, it's what we do, but I'd much rather tell somebody in the front end how to do it properly and check our website. Even if you've done stuff 1,000,000 times, there's all kinds of videos on there. There's bolt over doors, there's air shield installations, roof cap installations for outdoor walk-ins. There's a bunch of videos that make your job so much easier if you just view them.
Did you just say roof cap?
Roof cap for outdoor walk-ins.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Got to have a roof cap on a walk-in outdoors.
Good to know. So is your roof cap angled to sheet the water off so it doesn't sit there, or? No,
we actually ship styrofoam that's sloped. And we'll slope it away from the building and then put the roof cap on top of the slope.
Sweet. That's good to know. That's really nice.
You watch that video, it shows you how to do it step by step.
Man, this is great. I've noticed that on a lot of the other the Ollie group or Well Built, whatever they want to call whatever it is. I noticed they've been putting some more videos out, some more content out. The server side's getting more friendly, so that's really cool to see. So I appreciate that. So I think that's it for today. Everyone's just saying thanks, Jay. Jay's a brain. Jay is a valuable asset. Uh, Jay has a huge fan base, man. I dig it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you guys haven't followed Jay, follow him on LinkedIn. Jay Maiden. He's all over the place. If you're on Facebook, he's in the Fed group and a couple other groups. He's always showing stuff. Like I said, he shows the good, the bad, the ugly, but he does it in a positive light. He doesn't put people down. He wants you to learn from others' mistakes or your own mistakes, and that's the cool thing about Jay. So I appreciate
Education is key. Education is key.
Yeah, so I appreciate you coming on. Any final words, Rich?
Well, Nasty HVACR wants to know, does Jay wear Crocs?
Yes, I do.
I can see Jay out on the deck with his Navy cup, grilling box. I see it now. That's great. So, all right, everybody. Thank you, guys. Have a good night. There
Appreciate
it
it,
is.
Jay.
There's a Navy cup. That's making all the pictures.
Thanks, fellas.
Have a good night, guys. You can stay. If you guys would, please consider subscribing, rating, and reviewing the podcast. It really helps us grow and helps us know which direction to move in. Also, if you have any suggestions for guests, please email me at commercialkitchenchronicles@gmail.com. Or if you want to be a guest, email me. Love to have you guys on. Thanks a lot. See you next week.